Welcome to the Studio Chat podcast. My name is Barbara Thompson. Each week, I'll be bringing you a self-care expert or a message to help you to discover how to live your best life and understand your mind-body connection. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now, let the Studio Chat begin. Welcome to this episode of Studio Chat. Today, my guest is Annabel. She is going to be sharing her health journey with us and what life looks like today as a mum of two and how she built a life around learning how to love her body, as she used to hate her body. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that as you're listening to this. She's been through a huge battle with her mind, body, and soul, and Annabel wanted to share her story with you all today, being really beautiful and vulnerable in the hope of helping someone out there too. And before this chat today, she sent me a message letting me know that she was an open book and I can ask her anything, which I thought was so sweet, being vulnerable on a podcast for others to hear. And I'd love for you just to share with my listeners a bit about you. Let's just talk a little bit about you, where you're from, and we can kind of dive into your story.
Sounds great. Yeah, so I'm from not a town, a city called Dunedin, which is right down the lower part of the South Island in New Zealand. So we've been here about 6 years now. We are originally from Oamaru, which is about an hour 40 north of Dunedin, and it's got like 14,000 people in it, so it's quite small. I've got a husband who's an IT lecturer at the Polytech, and the two kids. I got Heidi, who's 3.5, and Miles is 14 months, I think.
Yay.
Yeah, and what else? Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, just hearing your story is, let's just dive into everything. So you were diagnosed with MS in 2018. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so I was home. So at the time we were living in Dunedin. So Grayson was studying and I was living, we were sort of flatting and stuff. And then went home, back to my parents in Oamaru for, I think it was just a weekend away, and it was just me. And I was standing up one night just watching the TV, and I remember it like real vividly because I was standing up and then just instantly in my hand I got like pins and needles like up to sort of the wrist of my hand. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And you know when you get pins and needles, you just kind of like, oh yeah, and sort of like you do your hand thing trying to get rid of it and stuff. And then I sat down and I sort of just watched TV and was sort of like moving my hand and trying to get rid of it. And then like sort of half an hour passed and I was like, crap, like this is a bit weird. I was like, the mum and dad, I was like, I've got pins and needles in my hand and it hasn't shifted. And they were like, oh, you probably just did something to your nerve or, something. We're just like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. Went back to Dunedin and then I went and saw the GP because it obviously still hadn't moved. And the GP sort of thought something along the lines like carpal tunnel. Do you know what it is?
Yeah.
So she sent away to get like a test done for that. And then while waiting for that, the pins and needles spread like up my left sort of arm, up to my shoulder. And then my foot, my left foot went numb. So my foot, and then it sort of spread slowly up to my knee.
Gosh, all on your left side?
Yeah, so like all on my left side apart from like my torso and all that area. And then it got to the point where like a few friends were like to me, like, bro, you probably have had a stroke or something.
Oh, and that's really what you want to hear. Awesome, righto.
And so I was like, I really probably should go to the hospital. Because it was getting to the point where I'd like hold stuff in my hand, and because of the sensation that was so numb and things, I couldn't, like my hands would almost just like release, like I couldn't feel the keys in my hands. I know
the time difference from, how you were standing up and you felt that numbing feeling in your hand and then moving down to your arm.
Yeah.
What was the timeline between that happening to it spreading up your arm then down your leg?
About a week. And I remember I was doing some nannying at the time and I was walking to pick them up, like parked the car and walked to the school to pick the kids up that I was nannying, like sort of looking after. And I remember walking along the path and you see all the other parents, walking to pick their kids up. And I remember my leg was just like, it was almost, they call it drop foot. So it's like where you're walking, but you're like actually having to like lift your foot up because it's like so heavy and numb.
Yeah.
And I remember walking along, and I had my Ugg boots on that day, and I remember looking around at all the people, and I was like, something's really not right with me. Like, I need to go get checked. But yeah, it was about a week in that period. Yeah.
And that's your Kiwi toughness coming out in you. You'll be right. We'll be okay.
Yeah, it is.
Half my body's numb, and I can't move my leg, but
I'll be fine. Exactly.
We're not laughing at this, like, please, we're not. Or it's just like Kiwis are very, Aussies are too, very
robust,
tough, and we just keep going. And what an example of how strong you are. Like, we'll be right. Just keep
going. And then so my boss at the time, so I went home actually. So I did the nannying day.
Oh, so you did okay.
I picked them up from school, took them home, did all the homework and stuff, and then drove home. And then that day, I can't remember, Grayson must, because he was studying at the time. So I must have messaged my boss, and I was like, hey, any chance, because I had no family in Dunedin at the time, so I was like, any chance you can pick me up and sort of take me to the hospital? Like, I think I really need to get checked. And like, I'd talked to her before because she's a physiotherapist.
Oh.
So she kind of had an understanding of like the body and stuff. So she took me and dropped me off, and they were real, like, quite thorough, because I think they were thinking a lot, like, I mean, when your left side's numb, like, something's not right. Yeah. So I think that's like the quickest I've been seen in ED. Like, they're real, like, onto it real quick. But
how are you feeling in that moment?
I don't actually know. Like, I don't really think, because I had glandular fever when I was out. So high school was like non-existent for me because I had glandular fever. Then I got chronic fatigue during high school. So I like did a thing called house school, which is like correspondence school. So it was like real non-existent. So I think I had gone through, and like I had depression at high school and a whole lot of other stuff. So I think I'd already gone through a lot already. I was at the point where I was just like, I don't think I knew what. Like, I think I was quite numb, to be honest.
Yeah, your body was protecting you.
Yeah, I just had no idea. And it wasn't, I mean, they didn't even give me any indications when I went in. Like, I remember in the ED, it was the nurse, the doctor on, and she was really thorough. And obviously, with MS, you don't usually get quick diagnosis. Like, usually it can take quite a long time to get a diagnosis.
When we say MS, I can never pronounce the full.
Oh, it's so hard. It's multiple sclerosis. It takes forever. It's the sclerosis part.
Yeah, and I didn't want to dog it. Like, I didn't want to butcher it, but I would. So that's why I've said MS. And I thought, you know what? Someone may be listening to this thinking,
what's MS?
What is MS?
Yeah.
Okay, so here you are in the hospital, and she's giving you a thorough check, and then alone takes a while to get diagnosed. So then what happened from there?
So then they put me up to the ward. I got an MRI done and a thing called a lumbar puncture, which is basically a needle into the back of your spine, and out drips like spinal fluid. So they
You're
think
tough, man. Here's another medal. I'm just passing another trophy through to you. Also, you're a mum of two, so for me, that's another big trophy. So your trophy wall right now is by the way.
The funny thing is, my mum was there doing it with me because Grayson wasn't there. He was doing something. And mum was there, and she was like holding my hand, and she was like rubbing my arm, and I remember being like, "Mum, stop it," because like I didn't want anyone rubbing my, because I had to stay still.
And how did you go through a procedure like that? Because it's not pleasant, is it?
No, it's not. Like, you got to stay still. It's not nice. Like, and they had because obviously, you know, MS is like, it's common, but not so. Well, it is common, but not super common. But you will seem to know someone with MS or through of MS. But there were like trainee doctors all around me, and like, you know, learning people to learn about it. So I think a training. I remember shitting myself, like, oh my gosh.
And what was the pain level like for that?
Not too bad, because they give you anesthetic. So like they put the anesthetic, it's called local anesthetic. So just like an epidural. So if any of the listeners would have epidural, it's kind of like that. So when I did come to having an epidural with my first, I was like, oh, I know what to do.
Light it up, boys. I know. Oh, you're awesome. Okay, so you went in and did some tests, and then when did they do the lumbar puncture and stuff? Was that pretty much straight
away? Yeah, they were pretty like efficient. So I got a neurologist to see me, come up and like check me over, got an MRI, got the lumbar puncture, sent that away, and then the MRI, it was that next day they come up, and the neurologist come up with like what was like a gang of like little trainees.
Yeah.
And sort of all stood around and closed the curtain, and then the neurologist sat on my bed.
Oh.
And he's like a man, like a man, and sat on my bed, and I thought, oh, this is a bit weird, like, and then they go, oh, do you want someone with you? And I was like, yeah, but no, just tell me. And then they said, yeah, you've got MS. And then, so my pop had MS, and my granddad had MS, and I remember seeing him, and so say 10 years ago, there was only like 2 medications. And now there's like, don't quote me, but there's like over maybe like 10, 15 medications. So huge difference from then to sort of now. So he wasn't on any medication. And at one point he had dementia and Alzheimer's too. But the MS is what put him sort of in bed on a tube through his tummy, couldn't talk, couldn't move, like basically like, yeah, it was not really nice at all. So that was the MS that did that to him. And it's only as of recently that I've realised, well, the dementia and Alzheimer's can't really do that to you. So, So, yeah, I just kind of went numb, and I remember ringing my parents, and my mum and dad were just like crying. I was like, what are you doing? Like, I'm not going to die. And then it was after they started crying that it actually probably hit me, and I started like Googling like, how long do you live with MS? Like, when will I be in a wheelchair? Will I be able to have children? Like, and I remember, I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but like that cold feeling you get like inside your whole blood. Have you ever experienced that? It's like your whole inside just feels like cold. Like it's like this, like, yeah, it's so weird. And I just felt like cold and like sick. Yeah. It was horrible.
Yeah. I just thank you so much for sharing all this, because I know, like you said, it's going to be helping people. So what happened from then?
Yeah. So then, so in New Zealand, you technically have to have, I don't know, I think they've just changed the rules, but you've got to have 2 clinical relapses to qualify for any treatment. So to need disease modifying treatment.
What's a relapse?
So a relapse, so you've got multiple sclerosis. So multiple sclerosis is basically a nervous system disease. So your body, you've got like lupus, and you can get real bad rheumatoid arthritis and things like that. So it's an autoimmune disease where your body attacks itself. So for me, it attacks, you've got like so you imagine like a electrical wire, right? You've got the actual wire, and then you've got the plastic coating around the wire.
Yeah.
All our like nerves and all that kind of thing in our body. It's like an electrical wire. We have these nerves, and then we have something covering it called a myelin sheath, which is like, it helps send the signals through properly.
Yeah. So
my body attacks the myelin sheath around that nerve. Yeah. So then when signals are going through, they can't go through properly, because it's like, you imagine that plastic being attacked on a wire, you'd have a fire. Like,
yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful way. That's a really good way of understanding it. So what's a relapse?
Like, so relapse is there's different types of MS. There's relapsing remitting MS, there's secondary progressive MS. There's 4 types. I don't know all of them, but I know primary progressive MS, and then there's like an isolated incident, which I can't remember the exact name for it. So I'm relapsing remitting. So that means I have a relapse. So for example, I have I'll have a relapse, so my body attacks itself. Mm-hmm. So it'll attack itself. And then I usually go on high dose steroids, which brings all the inflammation down in your body, because the attack makes you all inflamed. And
Can I
then
ask what the attack feels like?
No, so you just wake up one morning and you can't see, or you wake up one morning and your whole arm's numb.
Oh, so it's not like a feeling thing all day.
No, it just happens.
So something will be happening in your body.
Yeah.
It just happens like that.
It's like when I was standing in front of the TV and just bam, my hand went numb.
Okay.
Yeah, so
2 of those.
Pardon?
You've had 2 of those.
Relapses? No, I've had about 6.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
and so
my
now you
first
qualify.
yeah, so I qualified. But at that time I didn't qualify, so I had to go home on steroids, take the steroids, and I was real lucky. The steroids brought all the inflammation down in about 2 or 3 days. I was like back to say normal. We went away to a place called Auckland in New Zealand for a holiday to visit Grayson's parents, like 2 or 3 weeks after. And then we got pregnant up there with because a month later we found out I was pregnant with my daughter.
Yay!
Yes.
How did you feel about that? Because your world's just been turned upside down. Were you trying before?
Yeah, we kind of were, yeah. So we had sort of like gone off the pill and we were sort of like, well, if it happens sort of thing. And
what a beautiful blessing at that time.
It was. Yeah, it was. And it was like, it was scary. I remember being scared, but because I had only just had the one relapse and but I think I was so blasé too because I just had the one relapse. I took the steroids and I got better like 2 or 3 days later. And I thought at that time, that's what happens. You have a relapse, you take your steroids and you get better. And I was like, oh, this is not too bad, you know?
Yeah.
But that's not how it happens.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you just find out you're pregnant and then like what happens, obviously saying that your other relapses weren't the same.
Yeah, so I was pregnant for 9 months, and that whole 9 months I was so healthy. So usually what happens is when you're pregnant, your body protects the baby. So you don't usually have relapses or anything really. So I was real healthy at that time. I remember being like 26, 28 weeks pregnant, like painting up like coffee tables, redoing coffee tables and like refurbishing stuff at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I was so wow. And then I had my daughter, and then we moved back to Oamaru and lived with my parents because the place we were living in had like a locked-in lease, so you had like yearly leases. So we moved back to Oamaru, had my daughter, and then 5 months postpartum, I got a real bad relapse where I woke up. No, did I wake up? Yeah, I woke up, and I think it was my right side. My right side had gone all the tingly and stuff. And then over probably like a 5-6 month period, my whole body at one point was completely numb, like my eyeball, my scalp, my tongue, my teeth. It was horrible. And I remember, 5 months postpartum, and at that time too, Grayson had got a job at the Polytech here in Dunedin. So he would stay weeks down here in Dunedin and then do weekends in Oamaru because we couldn't find a house. So it was a blessing in disguise that we were there at the time because I had my parents. But yeah, it was pretty hard. Like there were times where I couldn't, they had like these 2 steps from the sort of dining area up to the lounge, just like, those 2 little elevated. And I remember being on the ground, like crawling up, putting Heidi down at the bottom of the steps and then like literally crawling up the 2 steps and then picking her up again because I didn't want to go up to drop her. It was horrible. Yeah, it was a real horrible time. And like I couldn't, like changing her nappies, you couldn't feel the tabs properly and like your fingers. And then you just constantly, so the numbness is like, you just imagine your whole skin, like you have buzzy bees under it, just buzzing constantly.
Gosh.
Yeah. So, and then at one point I got so numb on my left side on my torso, I couldn't feel the hot and cold in the shower. So that wasn't fun. Yeah, so that went on. I did like 3 high dose steroids in that period, but I couldn't. It just, I think it was just a continuous thing. Like it was just continuous. You couldn't sleep at night properly because your legs just constantly buzzing. So it was a really hard time.
I'm just so sorry that you've had to experience this, especially as a new mum as well.
Yeah.
And with all those kind of feelings and navigating your way with all of that is hard enough. And then not having sleep on top of that as well.
I know. Yeah.
So then what happened from there? Because I know you've got a little boy now. So
yeah. So in that period I started medications. I started disease modifying treatment, and then so it was something called Tecfidera, which is a pill that you take twice a day. So you take morning and night, and that's supposed to basically it's a disease modifying treatment. So it's supposed to almost modify the way that the disease works in your body, I think. Or like now I'm on an immune suppressive medication. So it suppresses your immune system down from activating how it should. So I started that, and I used to get terribly like flushing. So like my neck would go red, my face would get like just so weird symptoms. But I was on that for 6 months, and then I had breakthrough disease. So that's basically where I had another relapse. So it means that the medication wasn't working. So we moved back down to Dunedin at that time. So, and that relapse affected my eye. So it was my right eye. So I woke up one morning and I went to the toilet to go toilet sort of early hours in the morning, and I stumbled around the bed, and I didn't think much of it because I was like, when you just get up and you're like,
oh yeah. In the middle of the night pee, yeah.
Yeah. So I got up and just like went to the toilet, but it was actually really sad because I got up in the morning and I was like, like my eye's gone real funny. Like I can't see properly. Like I had double vision and everything felt off. Like I felt quite like, off. And then I had gone to the toilet again, and there was actually pee on the ground, like on the side of the ground. So I must have been so disorientated, like with my vision and my, when you like got a funny eye or you feel off, like your ear, if you've ever had an earache, you feel like off.
Yeah.
So I think I must have been so disorientated. I was sitting on the toilet, but not 100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then at that point I rang my MS nurse, because you've got MS people that you rang, and my vision just got so bad. Like I just, for 2 weeks, basically was just in bed, didn't go on my phone. Grayson and my parents had to like look after the kids. Like, yeah, it was horrible. Couldn't even, like, I'd wash my hair and I couldn't even dry my hair. Like Grayson would have to dry my hair. Even tried to straighten at one point.
Was this quite recent?
This was so lockdown, the first lockdown, it happened in lockdown. The first lockdown. Yeah, first lockdown in New Zealand. So was that 2020? I think it was 2020. Yeah.
I can't remember now, but yeah, it
happened then.
Okay, great. That would have been fantastic.
It was, and I had a fever the time I went to hospital, because I went to hospital with it as well. I went to ED, and I had a fever when they did it, so they put me through to the isolation ward, and here I was crying because I'm in a relapse now, flipping getting tested for COVID. I was like, oh my gosh.
And the world is turning to custard because it's a global pandemic, and here you are going, oh my gosh, can you throw anything else at me?
And I remember crying at one point because they wouldn't even let you walk to the toilet because COVID was so fresh then.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even let you walk to the toilet because then they'd have to go and clean the whole toilet, I suppose. So they'd bring one of those like wee wheelchairs over that you had to like sit on and
Oh, are you serious? So all your dignity was gone too. Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a great fun. But yeah, that lasted 2 weeks. So I'm really thankful for that. Because the other one obviously lasted like 6 months. So yeah. And then took steroids, lasted 2 weeks. And then we had a whole meeting with the neurologist again where they were like, look, so you've got different categories of medication. You've got like, so your Tecfidera is like your category, like if we rank them, say like 1, 2, 3. So you've got like your category 3, which is like your medications with not many side effects. Like it's been around for a long time. Like it's got like a 40% efficiency rate, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then you've got like your class 2, which may be like middle of the line, like 50% efficiency, that kind of thing. So they said to me then, look, like your MS is obviously very active, like you've got active MS. We want to hit it hard with some medication, like some real hardcore medication. But do you want to extend your family? Because, medications have side effects and you obviously can't be pregnant on some medications. So Heidi was 18 months old at the time, and we didn't ideally want another kid till she was about 3.
Okay.
So we had to have that whole conversation then, and we were like, yeah, we do want another kid. But then another spinner was thrown in the works, of course. So I have something called, it's a JC virus. So half the population of humans have it in their blood system. I don't know how they contracted it or what it is, but the person that found it, his name was John Cunningham. So it's a John Cunningham virus. That's what they've called it, JC virus.
Okay.
And so you're either negative or positive, right?
And
so you might, pardon?
Is this everyone will have
Yeah,
this?
everyone in the world, yeah.
Oh.
So you're either positive or negative. But if you have it, so say you're positive, say you're JC positive and I'm JC positive.
Yeah.
If you're JC positive, chances are it's not going to reactivate in your system. It's just going to sit there dormant. It's not going to affect you whatsoever. You're not even going to know you had it. But if you go on an immune suppressive medication that suppresses your immune system, it can then become active and it can cross something called the blood-brain barrier and go into your brain and give you basically the worst brain disease possible. It either kills you or leaves you severely disabled.
Holy shit. I'm just going to write this down because I've actually never heard, and people probably listen to this, they're probably like, Barbara, everyone knows about this. I
No, not many people do. So it's called JC virus.
Okay, I'm going to have a look at that. Wow.
Or JCV, yeah, JCV. So you're either JCV positive or you're JCV negative. But they don't test for it usually unless you're going on, say, chemotherapy or real strong medication because it doesn't really do anything.
Okay, so yes, you saying that, most of my listeners probably like, yeah, Barbara, we all know about it. Literally, with me, I'm always the last person, so that's okay. It's probably very common knowledge, and I'm just, I own a holistic wellness business, and I don't know what JCV is, but that's okay.
So the thing that it can give you is called PML. So if you look up PML, I can't say the proper name. It's called like progressive multifocal. That's as much as I can say. Something. So PML. If you look up PML brain, it'll give you what it is.
Okay.
So I had a high titer level. So I had a high amount of that virus in my system because you got different levels in your system. So then that put me at risk of the thing called PML. I was 1 in 5,000 for the first year I was on this medication, or 1 in 1,000 on the second year of this medication. But that medication that I got offered was the only medication that was strong enough to keep my MS at bay, but be pregnant on.
Right.
So I had to then make the decision, do I want to take the risk of basically becoming, like a vegetable state or dead, but have a child?
And the second year was 1 in 1,000 from
1 in 1,000, yeah. And you don't know how long you're going to take to get pregnant. So it was a hell of a decision and a hell of a time. I remember for 1 week straight, I was just like, what do I do? Like, do I not have any more kids? Like, because I'm not really a risk taker as per se in that department. Like, I'd rather just quite happy just chugging along. Like, I'll do my few little risky things, but otherwise I'm just quite happy to just stay in the background.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyways, we decided to go with it. So I did it. I was like, we want another child. And we were so lucky. We got pregnant in 3 months. So we were really, really lucky.
Awesome.
But I was constantly on edge. Like any symptom I had, I was like, oh my gosh, this is PML. Like I'm going to die. Like it was horrible. Like it was
surprised. You're human. I think anyone going through that, I know I would be exactly the same. You're heightened. And especially,
you're heightened, yeah.
Look at what you've just been through.
Yeah, I know.
How many rounds of steroids your body has had.
I know, huge amount.
And you put childbirth in there, which is a huge
C-section, yeah. Just everything, So got pregnant, had Miles, and then we started getting into. So I was real lucky at I was still in that 1 in 5,000. So it all happened sort of in that first year. So I was really lucky. And then I had Miles, and I wanted to breastfeed, obviously. So there was another medication that was always the plan. So I was to go on this thing called Tysabri, which is the medication, and then the plan was to always change to the other one called Ocrevus, which Ocrevus is usually just as efficient as Tysabri, but it's got way more risks with pregnancy.
Okay, got you.
Because it's a newer medication, so there are actually people over in America having babies and breastfeeding on it, but it's more like at your risk.
Yeah.
So I breastfed him for 3 months, and then he got cow's milk protein allergy, so that was just a shit show. So stopped Tysabri, which was amazing. Yes and no, because it also gave me a huge sense of energy, because with MS you get fatigue and all sorts as well, like brain fog. So the Tysabri gave me, every time you got Tysabri, like I was just like a new person. I had so much energy, I could go and do stuff.
Yeah, because it was masking your MS, wasn't it? So that energy. Yeah.
So and then I changed over to Ocrevus as I've had 2 doses now. So a year ago I changed over to Ocrevus then. and it's been really, really good. Like, it's kept me relapse free, but I don't have the energy the same.
Yeah. When you look at the stats and stuff, it's kind of like,
yeah, but it works. Like, it works for the relapses, and I mean, you'd take anything else but the relapses, because you're in such a horrible state, you know, where the world just feels like it's still spinning around you. Everyone's still going, everyone's still doing everything, but you're just like this. You just feel horrible. Like, you know, you feel so stuck and useless, and yeah, it's horrible.
it's not
Horrible
fair.
time.
It's not fair, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, what does life look like for you now moving forward with this disease?
Yeah, like, a lot has changed. So, like, for me, my key thing is, if you're going to do something, you do one thing a day. That's it. Like, I said, like, you know how some people go out and they'll go, right, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to go to the gym after, I'm going to go do the groceries, going to go see a friend, you know, later at night or something like that. If I'm going to do something that day, it's going for a walk. That's it, you know, like, and it's really hard because being young, lots of my friends are all working, they've all got kids, they're going to the gym, they're doing stuff. And for me, that's been really hard, because there's been many times I've been sitting down on the floor crying to, like, my husband, like, why can't I do that? Like, why, you know, I should be able to do that. You know, sometimes running around after my kids, I'm on the ground, like, absolutely pooped, like, you know, so it's been really hard. I've had to rejig my whole life, but in doing that has also come some positives too, because you've learnt to look inside yourself. And I used to be a real people pleaser. So I really struggled to say no. So if someone was like, hey, do you want to come out? But I had already planned something that morning, I'd be like, okay, yes, I'll go do that thing this afternoon. But then that night, I'd be absolutely just cooked, you know? So I had to really look into myself and go, look, Annabel, you're not saying no because you don't actually want to hang out with them. You actually have to prioritize what's important for your health. So I've also, you know, learned how to do that.
Yeah. How old were you when you were diagnosed with MS?
I was 21.
Okay.
Yeah. So 2018. So I think I was 21, or I hadn't turned 20. No, I was 20. I hadn't turned 21 just yet. I was 20.
And did they say anything about that with your age, or that it was
very common? Very common. So childbearing years with women is when you usually get diagnosed.
Okay.
Which I didn't know, because I thought it was an old person's disease.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't really, I'm one of these people that don't know any, like, you're my first person. So
yeah,
I'm learning so much about it. But I think too, sometimes when we can look at other people's lives, you know how you said to us before that you look around and all your friends are doing this and this and this and this, and like, to give you like my kind of 2 cents in that too, is so sometimes we can look at other people's lives and think that they're so lucky they're doing this, doing that, and they can be deeply unhappy. And those, especially those women that are always constantly busy, and they work with like the badger runner, not sleeping, but and like, you know how some people on Insta do like their little checklist. Today it's up to 7 a.m. but I've done the washing with the techniques, done the washing, done the laundry, done the garbage, done the shopping, done the whatever, and I just go, oh, what are you running from? What are you trying to prove to the world? And the fact that I love how you're putting yourself first, and I love how this new perspective is that sometimes when people are doing so much, they can't sit with themselves. They are avoiding something, or they're trying to prove to people where, you know what, other people don't give a shit about us. And when we start to realize that, it makes the people pleasing a lot easier, because really people don't care about, apart from their first and dearest, people don't care about us.
And it's hard because a lot of people, if you see that stuff, you actually put that expectation on yourself too, when really your expectation should only be what you set it to be, you know, not what other people around you are doing.
100%. Yeah. Yep. And the thing is, you know what, we all have those days where we don't feel like doing anything. We don't. We just watch Netflix, or just chill out, or just do whatever. And then some days we are quite productive, but that goes to do with our hormones and how we feel. And it's that whole flow. In a month, you can't be switched on all the time. It's not normal.
No, it's not. It's not. No.
Yeah. So how do you feel about all of this today?
I feel good now. It's taken a while to, I don't think you'll ever be regardless of what you get diagnosed with, if you got diagnosed with depression or you get diagnosed with anything, I don't think you can ever be okay with it. Like, 100% that's what it is. I don't think you can ever be at a point where that's going to be okay. Well, not okay, but good. I mean, you can get to a point where you accept it. This is what I have. This is how it's going to be. But what am I going to do about it? What am I going to change in my life? What am I going to, am I going to use this for good? Am I going to just, sit and dwell in my emotions? And I mean, yes, you can do that for a while, but as long as you don't stay there. So I feel good now. I've done a lot of work, but I feel really good now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm happy that you feel good too.
Yeah.
Because you're a very strong, beautiful young woman. And I just want to say that how amazing you are to go through all of that and to have this insight, because you can easily, it's a choice. You can easily go the other way.
I know. Yeah. Sit and dwell and yeah. And there are days, like, don't get me wrong, there are days where I'll go and talk to my mum and go, why me? And just bawl my eyes. Why me? Why? But it's allowing yourself to do that and then go, right, it is what it is, carry on,
Yeah, I love that. I love your perspective on that, and I can tell that you've done a lot of work on moving through that and not avoiding it, but sitting in it.
Yes.
I'll come back to the anxiety and depression side of things, but there's one big thing that I'd really love to talk about is body image. Thank you for listening to this episode with Annabel. I decided to split this episode into two. Part one that you've just listened to, that Annabel shared with us her vulnerable journey with her diagnosis with MS and how she lives with it today with her two young, beautiful children. I'd love to take this time to thank you, Annabel, for choosing me. It's such a privilege and an honour to be able to talk about your journey and what you've been through, but also how vulnerable you are to get your message out into the world so other people know more about MS and know what it's like to have a life with it. We then, in this podcast, we just had so many laughs and we were just talking. It was like two friends that are just catching up for a coffee. And the conversation from talking about her diagnosis and how she lives with MS moved to a different discussion about body image, how we love our bodies, anxiety and depression. So I decided to put it into two episodes. So if you head over to episode 32 about body image, this podcast continues into that episode.